in January this year, and it was a model that's for it's meant for visual classification. So it can tell you, how similar an image is to a specific text caption or string. And before CLIP, most computer vision models were trained on data sets with class labels. Like there's a big data set called ImageNet. And there's 1,000 different classes or whatever limited number that are things like container ship or go-kart, like you can see here. What made CLIP different was that they managed to train on not specific or explicit class labels, but just arbitrary text scraped from the internet. So they managed to scrape 400 million image and text pairs from all over the internet. And they ran them through this model or architecture that OpenAI designed. CLIP stands for, contrastive
language.
Oh no. I'm going back. Contrastive language image pre-training. Contrastive language image pre-training. Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
And they will run all of these pairs of images and text snippets through the model, trying to sort of place the encoding of the images and the text in the same sort of embedding space. In CLIP's mind, you can think of it as maybe anthropomorphizing a bit, but basically CLIP is trying to relate these things together. And in a similar way to human minds, apparently, we store multiple different types of information about a concept in similar areas of the brain. So there was some research some time back that's been summarized as the Halle Berry neuron, which is essentially just they had found when they probed the brain and they had people look at images of Halle Berry as a photo, as a sketch, or even the text Halle Berry, the same sort of neurons or set of neurons in the brain would consistently activate. And they saw the same thing with CLIP as well. Like here they have an example of, Spider-Man, photo Spider-Man, sketch of Spider-Man, some text about Spider. These are all these were found in the same neuron when they inspected a certain version of CLIP here. You can see a more simple vision model here, Inception V1, where it doesn't show the same behavior, unlike CLIP. And part of this, I think some of it comes down to the actual architecture of the network, but part of it comes down to having 400 million image and text pairs. I think some folks have tried to retrain CLIP from scratch on much less data, and they struggle to hit these same sort of results. Takes a lot of money and resources to make this stuff happen. So once we have this idea that CLIP just sort of knows these concepts, there was a fellow by the name of Ryan Murdoch. You can follow him as advadnoun on Twitter. He had, within just a few days after CLIP released, created a notebook called Deep Days, which combined a siren, which is a sort of I think it's a convolutional pattern network, and showed he had CLIP look at an image a newly initialized siren network output, and then had Clip compare the image to Helen of Troy. And based on that score of how close it was using an optimizer, a PyTorch optimizer, to optimize the weights of the siren network to output an image that was closer, according to Clip, that was closer to Helen of Troy. And after however many iterations, probably hundreds or thousands, this is what popped out. And that was, I guess, the start. And you could say before that, Ryan was standing on top of the shoulders of giants, not just OpenAI, but also I think Alex Mort. I don't want to butcher his last name, but the Deep Dream inventor, I believe, Alexander Morvantsev. This, I think, was the basis of all of this, using a vision model to guide images. Now we have a better vision model. Back then, Deep Dream was using very simple class-based vision models. So you'd say dog, you get a bunch of dogs. But now the possibilities are sort of endless, at least as endless as 400 million pairs can go. So soon after getting Clip hooked up to Siren for deep days, some other GANs had come out, some general adversarial networks. One of them was VQGAN. The project's also known as Taming Transformers for high resolution generations, I think. And you can see here sort of what it was made for was to generate coherent large images from a GAN, which was somewhat rare before this. They're typically small. Even so-called big GAN was 512 by 512. So soon after VQGAN released, like literally, I think again within just a few days, same as when Clip released, I think Ryan again had figured out how to guide VQGAN with it, and it was how to guide VQGAN with Clip, and it was very similar situation where once again VQGAN, randomly initialized, would output an image. You show that image to Clip. Clip tells you how close that image was to the text you were trying to go for. And then this Z latent vector, which is used for VQGAN, this vector changes with each iteration. And you decode that vector. So it's just a series of numbers. You decode that through VQGAN, get your output, and compare again, and just keep doing this over and over until you get towards an image. You can
so basically, Clip is giving the direction for that noise so that it resembles to the text as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. And to be clear, it's not like Clip is like actively involved in this process. It's like it's just giving you a score, and then the optimizer does the rest. And so here's an example of VQGAN and Clip. You can see it's a lot more detailed than some of the earlier method you saw here. This is a prompt for entering a portal into another realm. This is actually a snippet from a video that I think I have here, because there's a lot you can do with these methods, where like a lot of the early AI creative tools, I suppose, were very singular image based or focused. Whereas because Clip can help guide this stuff so well, you can do really cool stuff really cool animated stuff. So this was, I think, my first attempt, maybe, or my first the first thing I had released to the public. what you're going to see is Clip isn't only optimizing one image, but it's optimizing a series of images. So as each of these frames pass by, what's happening is I generate an image using the typical Clip and VQCAN method that I described before. And then between each frame that you're seeing here, the image was transformed in some way, like in a traditional way. So some of this was zooming, zooming into the image, zooming into the middle, or as you're going to see, some swirling. This was all done with traditional image manipulation libraries. But what's interesting is Clip seems to guide the image to still make sense. Like here you'll see it swirling, but like somehow it actually does look like a swirling portal. Like it's not just like there's an image and now it's being swirled. It's like at each step, the detail gets filled in a realistic or maybe not realistic, but the way you would expect it to go, I guess.
I have like 2 questions to clarify. So the text had a portal, and also the image post-processing or during the feed, you had like slurping or like some image manipulation. So it's like combined effect of text, like the Clip's vision of swirl also, and like which gets intensified with the image manipulation.
Yeah. I'm sure if I didn't have, the fact that the prompt was saying that I'm entering a portal, managed to guide that towards something that you would expect for a spinning portal. Whereas if the prompt was something unrelated, like if it was unrelated, like flowers, a field of flowers, then you would definitely just have a swirling field of flowers that looked weird. But yeah, the combination of the prompt and the transformations is what made it work out. And to be clear, like through parts of this, I was changing the prompt. So you can see right at the end here, there's like a really abstract field of flowers. The prompt had changed at that point, and it just sort of smoothly interpolated between the prompt being entering a portal to whatever it was at the end there. Something about a opening out of the portal to a field of flowers or something like that may have been prompt.
And if you can go back to the slide which had the architecture 7. So just to clarify, the input is a batch of images, and it's
sort of. It's one image, and then after this process completes, then I transform that image and stick it back into this process again. This process repeats.
So for example, the initial prompt with the initial random vector generated an image, and then once you added like image manipulation and generated a set of images from one image which was guided by Clip. And at what point you change the prompt? Because like if you just start training and let's say you have 10 frames, you start training, like how is the continuity ensured, and like can I have different prompts for 5 frames and different prompts for another 5 frames?
Yeah, definitely. I had done it very manually in that video, but there's certainly ways that you can pre-schedule that sort of stuff, and it would just be a sort of outer loop, or a nested loop around this process. And what was I going to say? You can. No, yeah, I don't know what I was going to add there. But yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Got it.
And so there are a lot of other models that you can, there's so much out there that you can guide with CLIP. This is an example of guiding a convolutional network. You can see how different the output is compared to the earlier models. Actually, it's somewhat similar to deep days, maybe, at least in terms of architecture as well. But this style that you're seeing here, the smoothness, will sort of, that was present in almost every result from this model. And it has its advantages and disadvantages. This actually is, so the difference between this and VQGAN, a big difference, is that VQGAN was pre-trained on a lot of data, on images. Yeah, pre-trained on a lot of images. And it learns to like recreate, or it learns to use the sort of textures and image knowledge that it had during pre-training to represent or recreate an input image. Whereas this here is a network that was completely randomly initialized with no pre-training. So this is what you're seeing is just pure CLIP's knowledge, I guess.
So Daniel, how would one select what generative model should be plugged into the clip? Like if they have a particular aesthetic in mind, then they should select the generative model accordingly. Or if they are doing like broader exploration, then maybe VQGAN might makes more sense. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something like VQGAN, especially a well-trained VQGAN, can cover a wide variety of styles and textures, especially if you're good at prompting it. But yeah, if there's a certain style you know you're into, then certainly you should go and try. Certainly you should focus on that sort of model. Like this one, for example, you might like the visual style of it in motion. This one is sort of bubbly. I don't have a video of it here, but it's really wobbly and then soft, versus if you see VQGAN when it's iterating, it's a bit crunchy or a bit like blocky or something. So it's very different, yeah, visual style, without having to like force that with some explicit prompt. Yeah. And you'll see a very different visual style here too. This is using CLIP to guide SVG. Here, the result is very messy. It's Jeffrey Hinton was the prompt. You can see the in progress here, but it is quite noisy because there's a noise background being put behind each of these pieces, each of these, I guess, vector graphic strokes, because that makes it easier for CLIP to optimize the image, because it won't optimize the image as if it's just lines on a white background. It'll optimize it for any situation. And I know you're not going to be able to see this too well, but you might be able to see the strokes wiggling around a bit. And this is near the end here. So you can see like this is a completely different sort of generation where if you look real close, I know it's really blurry, you can see over time these little strokes get added. And the strokes move, get longer, they bend into place and change color. So it's a completely different visual style, completely different process compared to the other ones. Yeah.
this is super interesting. And just to clarify, when we are adding SVG strokes, when CLIP is comparing the model, we are taking a snapshot and comparing image. It's just like the generative model, instead of a GAN, we replace with a noise which has like RGB values and the stroke length parameters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's you don't need a GAN at all for this stuff. And this is just another one, just another example. And about 6 months ago or so, I decided to venture into the sort of 3D realm with CLIP. And here's one of those challenges I was going to mention earlier, but it's too specific. So this, I had optimized a mesh using the PyTorch 3D library from Facebook. And I had shown Clip one rendered angle of the 3D mesh. And after iterating for a few hundred steps, it turned this ball, this starting sphere, into what's supposed to be an Obama sandwich, whatever that would mean. Because Clip is great at composing concepts that typically a human either would be able to put together, or like we would never even think to put together, or like what would that look like, you know? This does look about what I would expect an Obama sandwich to look like, I guess. But what you can't see from this angle is that, I mean, like, it doesn't look great, but it sort of looks like a model of an Obama sandwich, right? But if you look at it from the side, you'll see that it's nothing like a sandwich shape. I don't know if I had, so I don't know if I had, and yeah, sorry. So here's what it looks like untextured from the side. So you can see it's just a bunch of sharp polygons on one side of the image, or one side of the mesh. And that's because I'd only shown Clip one angle, right? So how do you get over that? You show Clip more angles. So here was the next experiment where I'd shown Clip 8 angles at once. Like every iteration, a random camera angle was shown, or 8 random camera angles was shown to Clip. And Clip tried to optimize the prompt from like an average, like, what would you say? The average embedding of all the angles, according to Clip, was guided towards these prompts. So from all angles, the model should look like this prompt. And you'll see it somewhat worked. There's supposedly an octopus up here, and a skull in the style of Dolly down here. Oops. But because of what I just mentioned earlier, I mean, just now, if you're telling Clip it's supposed to look like this prompt, even if you give it many angles, Clip isn't really incentivized to make it look really coherent. It's incentivized to make it look like that thing from every angle. So there's a lot more like tricks that would be needed to get this working well. Some of them are known, some of them are unknown, I think. And some of them you can like, I think I mentioned earlier that a lot of things, a lot of maybe creative ideas that you have might just work. And a lot of this stuff just tends to sort of, good ideas work out. There's one idea out there that's shown some promise of saying, if you get the camera angle in a certain position, like let's say behind the octopus, then the prompt should be the backside of an octopus. If the camera angle is over to the left, it should say like the side of an octopus. That sort of, there's a lot of tricks out there that could help with that sort of thing. And this is almost like what happens with NERFs. If you're familiar with those, where when they're training a NERF, you have the model train on the many different angles of something, whether that's something in real life or as a 3D model. In those cases, it's very straightforward. It's like this, we already know what the image is supposed to look like from this angle, but here we're going blind, except Clip. Like, we don't know exactly how Clip is going to decide to say, you know, is the backside of a fridge also a fridge? I don't know. And Clip doesn't know that fridges aren't supposed to have 4 doors. So
Yeah. So it's also like the knowledge the clip has based on the training data and maybe the training data while pairing with text. Like there is no image of refrigerator from the backside. So when we are expecting this clip to guide that, like it maybe if it's not in the training model, like it won't train like move the refrigerator from the backside. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know like for this model, like so there is no generator, it's PyTorch 3D, like we are playing with the vertices, location, and the color of that mesh. So is there like fixed number of vertices and they are moving around to
Yep. Yeah. Before starting, there was a set number of vertices. What you see here is probably a small number, based on what I'm seeing here. The Obama one was probably too high, as you can see from the side view. But yeah, it's a set number of vertices, but somewhat like the strokes, the SVG strokes earlier. There's certainly some tricks you can do, like training the smaller, like training something with less vertices, like a really simple octopus, and then once it looks about like an octopus, then subdivide the mesh so you have twice as many vertices now, and then you could add more detail, and then keep doing that. Yeah, that sort of thing can help a lot.
yeah.
I don't have any examples here, but
Intuitively, I felt like 3D would be way more complex to have like realistic because of the number of parameters rather than 2D. But from your explorations, like it looks, was there a lot of time difference between this generations and like the earlier generation?
the 2D ones or this one?
2D versus 3D, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At least like, so I haven't gone back to like try to optimize this again in a long time, so maybe it would be a lot faster now. But at the time, it was quite a bit longer than at least the 2D methods that I was using. I know some people who use Collab for VOGAN notebooks might be used to waiting like 10 minutes or something. So maybe that's not too far, but at one point I had it could generate a vague mushroom shape with good mushroom colors and whatnot, within about 3 minutes, I think. But it was, it's just a very simple mushroom. Trying to do something like an Obama sandwich probably wouldn't have worked out.
Mhm.
And like you said, there's a ton of vertices, like just raw vertices. There's other probably much better things to guide than meshes, I think. There's a lot of things that are easier to optimize, and then you can convert them into a mesh if you need to, use it in a game, use it in whatever, in architecture. Yeah, you might want to optimize point clouds or optimize volumes or something, and then convert it. Yeah. Speaking of which, this was not a super great example, but this is optimizing a 3D point cloud using, again, PyTorch 3D library. They offer, you can optimize different representations. I think point clouds, meshes, volumes, nerfs, maybe one other one are all available in that PyTorch 3D library.
Yeah.
So this one I had optimized towards the prompt Cyberpunk Earth. You can see it kind of works, but this was a lazy attempt because it had started with a sort of sphere to begin with. So it didn't have too much to change. This was a little bit later when I was getting specific shapes to finally come out. So this is, the prompt is Samoyed dog. It's a big fluffy white dog. And I had left this running for probably an hour or something. And when I came back and looked at my screen, I was worried. I thought, like, did I not set up the camera angles to rotate around it? Because this right here looks like it's all from the same angle, right?
Yeah.
But as you'll see in this video, it created a sort of optical illusion where from every single angle, it looks almost exactly the same. And that's one of those things you're gonna have to fight against, since Clip was only meant to see 2D images. And part of that, I think it might have had something to do with the fact that it was running for a whole hour or whatever. So it just kept trying to optimize towards that one best view, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know if there is like a discriminator analogy, but looks like it was able to fool the generator somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then this, so there was a new model that had come out a few months back, that this research team had sort of frozen, I believe they had frozen the clip, what do you call it, encoders. They had frozen the weights of the clip text and image encoders, and had trained an audio recognition model or an audio embedding model, an audio encoding model alongside Clip to try to place the embeddings of audio, text, and image in the similar space. And so that you can do things like, if you wanted, you could search across a body of audio clips by text, without them ever being labeled before. You can search by images, like what should a cat make, what noise should a cat make, whatnot. And it turns out you could use it in much the same way as regular Clip, where instead of saying, hey Clip, does this image look like this text prompt? Instead, Clip is scoring how well this audio, how well the image matches an audio prompt. So here, and let me know if this is too loud. I think it was pretty loud. Oh no. I don't know if I have an example. I don't know if this link is dead now. I don't know if I have an example, but this was essentially it was a prayer, sort of, I think it was some sort of temple prayer noise. Mm-hmm. And this video was just a progress to getting to this image anyway. So this image you see here is what came out of that audio of just somebody sort of singing a prayer of some kind.
So each of the frequency is matched to the frame here.
Somewhat, like it sort of understood that, yeah, I guess you could say it's a frequency. Yeah, that's probably what the vector information is. Yeah, it's saying, or I guess it's the embedding of those frequencies from the audio file, was supposedly similar to this image. Audio Clip itself doesn't have the full capabilities of Clip, unfortunately. So while they were training it, while they were training the audio side, it seems like the image side may have lost some, like the image and text sides may have lost some knowledge, because it tends to not produce, this is one of the best results I've seen. That's not to say this model could never work. It's just that the original released pre-trained checkpoint, wasn't perfect. But yeah, this is really sort of the multimodalness can only expand. I'm ready for the smell to image soon. I don't know what else there is. Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many arbitrary things you'd never think of are multimodal. I made a joke the other day about when are we gonna have image and image to HTML, not HTML, but the whole web, HTML, JS, CSS, that sounds possible. It's basically text encodings of how a web page should be built versus an image of that web page. That sounds kind of possible. It seems like anything is possible.
I saw in using OpenAI, Copilot, like we have like text to HTML, like code generator, so that in one mode it's working like in text generation. So maybe.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to try Codex yet. I have Copilot, which is great, but I've seen some really impressive stuff come out of Codex directly. What do I have here? Oh, and besides like optimizing like GANs or any of these neural networks, you can also just optimize plain old RGB, like just the pixel values. So instead of optimizing this Z vector of sort of arbitrary numbers that only GGAN knows about and knows how to decode and encode, the tensor object being optimized here contains what you would expect for RGB values, like the 3 channels, and the numbers go between 0 and 1 to represent 0 to 255, whatever, of each color. And yeah, so what you see here is really, really a raw version of what Clip sort of has in its brain. This was supposed to be these several prompts added together. I should mention here, like something that's pretty interesting is you can have Clip go towards multiple prompts at the same time, or you can take the embedding of multiple text prompts and average them together. And so you can end up like, in this case, it was 3 things that were pretty similar. And it was just kind of different ways to represent the same idea, which is this is a good trick to do with Clip. Because it's sort of like, I don't know how, if you go look at the Clip blog from OpenAI, you would notice that, or sorry, not the Clip one, the Dolly blog from OpenAI, you would see examples where they have very repetitive text. Where is it? Like a pentagonal green clock, a green clock in the shape of a pentagon. For some reason, repeating those things can really help Clip, especially repeating things in several different ways. You can think of it in a basic way, like in a straightforward way of like, Clip may have never seen an image like that next to that very specific text prompt you have there. And it's not that Clip can't approximate. It can approximate, but it sure helps to give it more of a wide area, I guess, if you give it multiple prompts.
Yeah, I just had a thought, like if you give opposite words, let's say an equal weight, day and night, in the same prompt, will Clip neutralizes it? Because like it's.
That's a good question. We can try that later. I don't know. Yeah, day and night. I've certainly tried like contrasted like things that shouldn't make sense together, but I don't think I've ever tried something that straight up. I don't know what that would get you. I guess we'll find out. Maybe just dawn. I don't know. Oh yeah, and this. What was I gonna say? There's the more basic you go, like the more raw you optimize with Clip, the more tricks you need to make this stuff work. So I won't get into like full details here, but there were a lot of extra losses and extra tricks I needed to make this image come out as somewhat smooth as it did. Because otherwise optimizing RGB directly is quite difficult. Like the results can turn out very noisy, extremely noisy, without a lot of finesse, I guess, and too much time on your hands.
I was about to ask, because like you are optimizing each like RGB, and there are like, looks like this is high res image. So there are a lot of variables you are optimized here compared to like smaller latent vector in earlier GAN model.
Yeah. This I think was 720p. So I don't know if I would calculate this right, but like, I don't know if that's what the parameter number would be for 3 channels. But yeah, Well, but what was nice about that is that like you can go quite big if you're going direct like this with RGB or something else. You can go a lot bigger in the same amount of memory compared to VQGAN or any of the other newer models out there that we haven't covered yet, or the 3D stuff for sure. But anyway, but this was so much. You can go like 4K by 4K on a consumer GPU, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a great result. But you can certainly run it. But yeah, there's a lot of parameters to try to keep control of. It's the same, almost the same, or a similar problem to optimizing the mesh vertices, because it's just so raw. It's so much to deal with that like you don't have any help. Like the GANs help you out. Even the convolutional networks help you out because they sort of don't even allow extreme noise. The way the convolutions like change the raw parameters out, and you won't get that same problem that you would get from naively optimizing RGB.
And do you have like your internal trick, like when you see the generation and after 5 minutes, like, okay, it's not giving any result compared to the prompt, you just stop it rather than like waiting till the end?
Yeah, not 5 minutes, like, seconds. Yeah, it's absolutely like vital if you really want to get into this, that you need to have the instant feedback. You need to have this stuff running quickly if you can. If you can get your hands on good equipment, that will be really great for your creative process and just your general development of this, because the faster you can see the results, the faster you know something's wrong or right. And so, yeah, I think you'll find that in a lot of notebooks, people will print out the progress like sort of spaced apart. Like instead of printing every single iteration, they'll show it every 25 or every 100 steps or whatever. I've always been obsessive about it and go for every step. I look at every single iteration, and that's not always easy. Like if you're dealing with a cloud computer or collab computer, like it can be a lot to try to sort of send all of those images over the network. If you're running locally, that's a lot easier. And yeah, just like you said, like looking at it for a few seconds or a few minutes, I know right away something's wrong. Try something else, change the parameters of it. Or it's also been an easy way to see like what does clip know and not know. You don't want to wait like 20 minutes and then find out, oh, this is like literally nothing, or this is like just letters of my prompt, like just the text of my prompt, because clip had no idea what the concept was.
Yeah. And like in image you can get intuition, but like when you were experimenting with point cloud and 3D mesh, like sometimes like it could take some time to get like some abstract shape, because like everything is going.
Yeah, that takes a lot more time. But yeah, that it's hard to see, it's hard to know, like, yeah, like it's hard to estimate where those points are going to go, or like where, yeah, it's just when you're dealing with a third dimension, it's so much more difficult. With images, there's only so much that can happen. And most of the problems that you're dealing with are obvious, like oversaturation or noisiness, or it just not creating the image you want, or the composition is weird. You can usually tell that right away, and you can tell what direction it's going, whether it's going to keep going that way, but you don't really know where the 3D stuff is going most of the time. Yeah. And then down here, this was just further iterations on the direct raw RGB optimization, where I was trying to get clip to generate pixel art, which is somewhat difficult because, for one, clip was not trained to look at very small images. A lot of pixel art is just a few pixels, of course. but Clip was trained to see like 224 by 224 pixel images. And there's, once again, just sort of a lot of tricks needed to sort of try to push your Clip optimized images towards the style you want. So like here with this pixel art stuff, it one example of something that helped a lot was in almost all of these scripts, you'll see when the image is prepared to show to Clip, there's usually some transformations that happen on it, like rotations, resizing to make sure that it's the size that Clip is supposed to take as input. And a lot of those operations use bilinear resizing, interpolation, whatever, which sort of keeps things smooth when you, a bit smooth and blurry kind of. So something that helped with generating pixel art was using the nearest neighbor interpolation, which if you're not familiar, you can see that this image over here has these big blocks, right? Those aren't really 1 pixel each. Those are like, I think this was blown up like 4 times. So you can see that each of those, dots is actually like, 4 pixels. If I had expanded this with bilinear interpolation, it would be probably really smooth. But instead, it's very blocky and that's what we want to show Clip. We don't want to show Clip the smooth one because then it won't know that it's going towards pixel art. Having pixel art in the prompt is also very useful.
Yeah. This is super interesting. And I want to pick your brain on this. Like if someone wants to develop some abstract art, one straightforward way would be like giving in the prompt, but also I could limit the number of strokes in SVG or like as you did in like pixel art, like this kind of like, so what are some possible techniques like one could do for those exploration?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that you can do like that with additional, like, let's say additional losses. So like the main loss here is the Clip score, where the loss means like how much the loss informs the optimizer how to change the vector we're optimizing. What do you call it? Besides the Clip score as a loss, you can add more losses. Like let's say you wanted it to be symmetrical, then just go find like at a very basic level, like find out how to do that mathematically. How do I say, okay, this half of the image should look like this half of the image? Figure out how to do that. It's some pretty simple math, and add that as a loss alongside your Clip score, and you'll find like you could not only can you like add a feature like that, you can weigh that loss negatively, positively on a range and get sort of more fine-grained to exactly what you're trying to get. Because maybe you don't want fully symmetric, maybe you want it to be naturally symmetric, so you'd have the weight a little bit lower or something. You can do things like restricting the color palette. That one I think really changes the style of things. You can enforce things like, let's say how here I was using the nearest neighbor interpolation to make sure that it stays blocky. If you wanted something really smooth, you might show Clip, or you might blur the image before you show Clip or something like that. Lots of little things like that can help out. Yeah. You could also like potentially in between each iteration do something to the image, whatever that might be. There could be so many things, I guess.
Okay. And let's say if I want to make a tool which is Picasso style art generator, how would I proceed that? Will I like restrict the training or fine tuning of clip on images of Picasso, or like or the generator I should play with, or how would you go about that?
That's a good question. So I don't think there hasn't been a lot of, like, at least within the community, there hasn't been a lot of clip fine tuning or training, mostly because, well, for one, like clip is already pretty great, but training one from scratch, it's a lot of work. Fine tuning it. I think the problem was there was no official code from OpenAI on how to fine tune, and later on people released code on how to do it. But that is an interesting way to like incorporate new information into clips embedding space. Of course, you wouldn't do it for like what did you say? What artist did you say?
Picasso.
Yeah, like of course, clip already knows Picasso. But let's say you wanted to do like a custom project for a contemporary music artist, right? And you know that Clip doesn't know that music artist because they really got popular in like 2020. And Clip's data set was collected up until like, I think the end of 2019. So you might want to try collecting a bunch of images of that musical artist and text prompts to go along with it. It'd probably be good not to just have like, you know, Picasso, Picasso, Picasso as the text prompt. Maybe it would be good to have something a little bit more specific. And yeah, I haven't tried it myself, but you can go down that path and add some new information. What might be easier is, like you said, you could pre-train the generative model on something specific. And that is a lot more likely to like get you where you want to go. For like, let's say it was Picasso, you know, Clip knows Picasso, but if you were to train a generative model to only know how to represent Picasso material, then it's going to come out a lot better, even when you're not trying to prompt for Picasso. So like one thing I didn't have here in this presentation, because I hadn't worked with it too much myself, was optimizing Stalgan with Clip. So if anybody's not familiar, Stalgan is a project from NVIDIA, and it generates very realistic faces. And well, not just faces, that's just one of the common models, one of the common pre-trained checkpoints. So you could optimize Stalgan with Clip. Struggling to find a good example here. Here's one. Peter Bailey's is definitely someone you should follow in the space. Here, they're trying to match the same prompt that I showed earlier from Ryan Murdoch for the Deep Days model, where this is Helen of Troy. And just by the nature of this model having, it already only knows how to generate high quality faces. So no matter what sort of prompt you give, you're gonna get a face. And like, even if the prompt doesn't make sense to be a face, right? Mm-hmm. So like, and that can be really useful. Like that can be really interesting. I don't have a great example here, but like, you know, imagine you said a starry night or something. Then you'd get, you know, a really probably interesting, pretty starry face. You know, there might be something in the background, but in general, it's going to be high quality and it's going to be a face. I think.
So is it right to say that the generator is causing some biasness or a theme here?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right to say. It's certainly a theme thing for sure. Definitely bias. There's this, here's another example that I could find it. Catherine or Riverside Wings here had trained a diffusion model on Jess Lewis Wayne. It's an artist who creates these lots of cat paintings, very odd, sort of almost psychedelic cat paintings. And this is one of the earlier checkpoints, so the results aren't like the best. I think they were better a little bit later, but no matter what prompt she puts in, it's going to come out looking like a Lewis Wayne piece. So yeah, if you trained on only Picasso pieces, you're gonna more easily get Picasso-like outputs, no matter what your prompt is.
Got it. This is like quite insightful. And just to conclude on this aspect, we saw Clip, and basically you could use Clip and plug it with any generative model. And we saw starting from with Ryan's work, and then like with GAN, with diffusion models, with point cloud, with 3D mesh, with RGB pixels, with audio. And since this is multi-model, we could also use Clip and feed images and get audio to get other possibilities. Is there any other mode or thing which we didn't cover here and people are working on or like is interesting?
Yeah, there's been a lot of recent work towards optimizing NERFs with Clip. I think one of the biggest progress there was from AJ. Published a paper recently called Dream Fields, which was guiding a NERF with Clip in a similar way to what I did with the meshes.
Hi there.
They had shown Clip multiple angles of the thing being rendered, of the thing being optimized, and made it match the prompt. And they had a lot of extra tricks to make sure that the shape stayed like a nice solid small shape, and it didn't just explode into a bunch of voluminous, I don't know, clouds. It didn't get too small, it didn't expand out to nothing. And part of what makes this easier is, like, as I was explaining earlier, vertices are sort of too raw to try to optimize. Not that you couldn't, it's just it's really difficult. But NERFs are sort of, the neural representation is a bit more forgiving. Sort of, I think might be a good way to explain it. And there's been some other similar work that's in progress now. Other things. There's some projects like Rudali and whatnot. Well, I guess that one doesn't really use Clip, actually. The simulated original Clip. Am I missing out anything that, like, I know there's something out there, but I'm struggling. Like, yeah, I'm struggling to.
We covered, like, if we covered vector, like strokes, we covered image diffusion.
There's a lot of, and there's a lot more. I mean, and what I'm going to show later is a network called Deep Image Prior, which is